Welcome back. The banking sector remains one of the most important sectors in the Nigerian economy. In addition, the state of the banking sector in terms of asset allocation, asset quality, and capital adequacy is often used to assess the performance of an economy and the risk landscape. Afrinvest will be launching the 12th edition of its Nigerian banking sector report titled Nigeria Reopens for Business, in which it will review the performance of the banking sector and the economy in 2016-2017 and outline the outlook for 2018. Now, joining me on the show to preview the report ahead of its launch at the London Stock Exchange on Friday, the 27th of October, is the Group Managing Director of Afrinvest West Africa Limited, Mr. Ike Chuki. Good morning, Mr. Chuka. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Good morning, Chimeze. Thank you for having me.
Right. In recent months, we have seen some kind of improvement in the macroeconomic conditions, and that optimism seemed to have been captured in the title of your report. What factors are driving this optimism?
Well, it's been long in coming. I think the key factors are somewhat immediately apparent. From 2014, when we began to see a drop in oil prices, and then it then took a massive drop in 2015 to, well, from about $100 per barrel to below 50, and then almost approaching 20. We've seen a gradual climb back up to in the mid-50s in terms of dollars per barrel for crude. So, but the decline in oil prices caused a massive drop in our foreign exchange income, and so you saw quarter-on-quarter earnings from exports of oil just dropped precipitously, which was then what caused, was contributory to the recession we entered into in 2016. So there was massive illiquidity in the dollar market. With the recovery of the oil price environment, we've seen a gradual rebalancing of the current account of the federal government, whereas most of 2016, they were in negative position quarter on quarter. Now into 2017, you can see a positive position, which has helped the central bank in rebalancing the economy. At the same time, the central bank has introduced several key reforms. Notable is the opening of the I&E window, the investors and exporters window for foreign exchange. And that has then brought more transparency and openness in that particular market. We've seen about $16.6 billion traded since March when that window was opened. So this is all very positive, and on the back of that, we can begin to see a more stable macroeconomic environment ending 2017 and into 2018. Right.
Now, do you have confidence in the ability of the central bank to perhaps continue with these reforms?
Well, there's always a saying about don't waste a financial crisis. I also believe that you shouldn't waste an economic recovery. And so I like to look at the market from the point of view that the glass is half full rather than half empty. I think that where we are today, if we all look on the positives, there's enough going on in the economy at large for the central bank to continue to sustain its, I would say, more market-friendly policies. Let me give you an example. It's not just the central bank that is at work here. The government itself has been very busy, and coming out of their months and months of planning, they've launched the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. And this is supported by several plans that various arms of government have also been working on. You've seen, for instance, the Minister of State for Oil announce the 7 big wins in the oil sector. You've seen Minister of Trade and Investment talk about ease of doing business. You've seen a lot of discussions about the power sector reforms, how we can fix the power sector, given the challenges we went into from the privatization. But when you look at the umbrella economic plan, the ERGP, you then realize that actually it feeds off of these various MDA plans. And if it's well implemented, then it catalyzes some of the things that central bank is doing and then points the economy towards a track of sustainable growth and expansion.
Now, so far, would you say that the ERGP has really had any impact so far?
It's very early days. Clearly, the ERGP itself is anchored on 5 pillars. The first being to ensure macroeconomic stability. And I think the central bank has done that, creditably in the last 6 months. And there's enough momentum going for it to maintain that. And then the next 4 planks, agriculture, food security, power and energy, so all the focus in the power sector and the electricity sector and oil and gas, transportation infrastructure, and last but not the least, industrialization, particularly led by SMEs. The macroeconomic work has been done, but you need to now layer on the other pillars of the ERGP. Clearly, it's a difficult one because the government is not, the executive part of government is not alone. You've got the legislature to deal with, and as you know, there's been a combative stance for the last few months between the executives and the legislatures, and you need to carry them along because some of these reforms require new laws or modifications of existing laws, so that's critical to do. And of course, as we move into 2018, one has to keep a watchful eye on 2019 when there's another election window which could put some brakes to some of these reform programs.
So how would you describe the resilience of the banking sector, particularly in the light of the recent macroeconomic headwinds?
Yeah, I think the sectors weathered the storm quite well. The bigger banks have done better than the smaller banks. We categorize the industry into two sectors. Tier 1 banks, which include the GTB, likes of GTB, Zenith, Access, UBA, First Bank, and ETI. And then Tier 2 banks, which start with perhaps Diamond Bank, Stanbic IBTC, Union Bank, and the rest. We can see from our report that the Tier 1 banks have done far better than Tier 2. Indeed, you've seen an expansion in market share amongst the Tier 1 banks from an average of about 60% of the banking sector market share to now trending towards 70% as a collective. From an earnings perspective, the Tier 1 banks have also done better. From a valuation perspective, the market gives the Tier 1 banks a much higher rating, both in terms of price-to-earnings ratio or price-to-book value.